trekker is reed.
De trekker is red.
Op het maar is een boot.
Op het maar is een boot.
Is raas.
De boot is raas.
Op de boot is een vuur.
Op de boot is een vuur.
Is heet.
Het vuur is heet.
De boer het een grut weilaan.
De boer het een grut weilaan.
Rit het schip.
In het weilaan rit het
In
schip.
het weilaan is ek een kou.
In het weilaan is ek een kou.
De kou is wit, maar zwart.
De kou is wit,
In het weilaan
maar zwart. In het weilaan is een mar.
In het mar zwemt een gwoze.
In het mar zwemt een gwoze. De gwoze is gries.
In het weilaan
In het weilaan
appelbeer.
zit een appelboom.
De appel is reed.
De appel is red.
In de appelboom zit
So
een
folks,
voedsel.
here's just showing you, that's actually most of the an audio. There's this new language that's it, the new language I've decided to learn. So I've never spoken, or had never spoken, until a couple of days ago. I had an online session with a friend of a friend, let's say. I've found out is a native speaker of this language, and she was kind enough to do video lesson with me, really. And I asked her to do the lesson the same way as I do my italki lessons. That is, everything completely in the target language, not one word outside of that. I had to beg and plead with her, and I eventually got it. So of course I don't know, and I didn't know any vocabulary in this language. I don't know how to write it, I don't know how to read it, and I don't really want to just yet. What I wanted was to hear it and start making the sounds, and once I've got those sounds down, I will then start associating them with the writing. But so we had this session, and the session is the same way as I do my video lessons. Is you start with very small elements, very small bits of vocabulary, and we draw pictures of these little things. It turned out to be a farm, the scenes on a farm and a field, and a farmer and the goose in the lake, just like what I do, because I had already given her video sessions in Gaelic, so she learned my routine the hard way, I suppose you could say, because she is a student of mine in Gaelic, and I'm now her student in her native language. So what was I going to say? And I believe that that's the way to do it. It's called immersion, of course, and what I was doing there reminds me of a scene from a film in the last century called Breakfast at Tiffany's, and back in those days it was an enormous privilege to be able to have immersion in a language in the comfort of your own home without having to travel to the country. The rich and famous lady in the film was doing something like that, but mine is much better, because this video that I have now is built on the experience we had in that 45-minute online video call, the little lesson I had with shout out to Ryan, my teacher in this language. And so I know pretty much intimately all the different parts, because I drew them watching her draw them in the picture, and that built up this scenario in my head. So now when I am repeating these terms, this vocabulary, I have a very close association with each element of it, you know. Almost a personal friendship with all the parts. For example, the farmer and the goose and the tractor and all the things that are mentioned in it, even though that's the only things I've ever heard are spoken in this language. And I believe that this will give me a nice language core, a foundation kind of core in the language. Learning how to speak it, because I imitate everything she says exactly, or as close as possible to exactly. Now I don't know how to spell these words, but I kind of know I more or less know what most of them mean, and some of them I don't know, but I will figure that out with the context eventually. But I do know how to say them all because I'm repeating them. I play this audio, it's about 2 minutes long, and I just repeat and repeat and repeat, and I know most of what I'm saying in there because I'm remembering building up that situation, that scene on the paper drawings, and the drawings on paper that we were doing. And this for me replicates what I did in the last century when I wanted to learn French. I went to France and listened to the French speak it and tried to identify what they were talking about, and slowly but surely built up, quite quickly actually built up French. And then a few years later, the same thing in Spanish. I went to live among Spaniards. The only place I could access was in Spain, which was great. And from listening and repeating and again listening and again repeating words, even before I knew what they mean, I quickly built up a good pronunciation. And I would say that within 6 months of starting my learning of French, I was speaking French pretty much at native level. Within 6 months or a year, certainly within a year, I would say 6-7 months. Then the same thing with Spanish. A few months later, I was speaking Spanish with a pretty native level. Now, I didn't start getting involved in reading and writing until I had most of the pronunciations down, which was, I guess, about a month after I'd started listening and repeating. And then, of course, I got very involved in the spelling, and in writing and reading and composing and all sorts. So that's my point of this video. The problem is with Gaelic is people somehow they don't seem to get to a level of correct pronunciation, and I think it's because they learn to read before they're learning to speak, and they're associating these letters in these words wrongly. Now, one great advantage that Gaelic has is it's phonetic. I think the language I am now starting to learn is also pretty phonetic. So once you learn a core vocabulary, I don't know, 100 words, 200 words, 300 words, you'll basically have covered all the possible sounds and the combinations of sounds, so that when you then learn how those words that you already speak and pronounce well, when you learn how they are written and how to spell them, then you will soon be able to just see a piece of text and pronounce it by using the same sounds. And that would happen perfectly well with Gaelic because it's such a phonetic language. It doesn't happen with English because it's a non-phonetic language, which is why a lot of foreigners will talk about half and a salmon. He had half a salmon and stuff like that because they see this L and they assume that because it's pronounced, sometimes it's always pronounced. But with Gaelic, it's generally, if it's pronounced at all, it's generally always pronounced just like that in almost every case. So the very few exceptions are learned very easily, very quickly. So what's my point here? So my point is, if you want to speak correct Gaelic, do what I'm doing. Get an audio of somebody who speaks it well, pronounces everything, and listen to. Ideally, get a little language session, 45 minutes of talking to this person, be it face to face, be it online, wherever, where you're building up a little core story, a little scenario, and you get to know the pieces of the scenario, even if it's only maybe, if you're only using I probably have 50 words in my scenario, but you get to know them all. And you get to learn how to pronounce them. You don't need to know how to spell them, as I say, but you need to just imitate how they're spelled, how they're pronounced by the native speaker. And listen and listen and listen, and then and repeat, of course, every time. So I put this on in the car whenever I'm going anywhere, and I just copy it like a parrot. And I am at the risk of not being humble. I reckon I will, if I keep doing what I'm doing, if I keep listening to this and doing the other steps to learn it, that I will be a correct speaker of this language. I think with a native pronunciation, or damn near, within the year. So I urge anybody, if you or if you want to learn Gaelic, if you already have learned it, that's unfortunate because you've got to undo a lot of the reading and start listening again. And if you've never learned it before, great. Find somebody who will speak it to you where you can make this little interaction of a small story, a small core, a small little group of words, and have the person then, because that was we did our 45-minute session, and then I said, would you mind just reading, just calling out again on an audio everything we did, and she did, and she did it in maybe 2.5 minutes. So that's 45 minutes of a language lesson where I'm learning all of these elements, condensed then into simply the audio of 2 minutes. And now that I know it, I just need to go over it. I'm kind of rambling here because I'm trying to drive at the same time. So I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. If you want to learn to speak Gaelic natively, forget all of the sounds you've learned. Try to wash them out of your mind and start anew with somebody speaking the dialect you want in clear speech, having first had a little session deciding and working on what you will be talking about. And that's how you build the language core, from quite small, and then everything you learn from then on, you will process it through this manner of speaking, through this pronunciation, because once you start reading it, you will be able to apply the same pronunciation things. And so yeah, that's it. In order to speak native Gaelic, forget what you know and start listening. Okay folks, I hope that's all. I hope I've included everything I meant to say there for now, and everybody have a great morning, evening, night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Bye bye.